first time you go through it, you're like, oh my God, I'm dying.
Hello, are you ready to start some sustainable chit chat?
Always for the sustainable chit chat.
Hello everyone, how are we? How are we, Marie? How's your week been? What's been going on?
This weekend, on Sunday, I went to an anime convention for the first time since COVID. Yes, guys, I am that cool. And it was one of those where I was like, okay, we're slowly getting back to normal. Like, this is something I used to do a lot, and just getting into cosplay again and just meeting people and taking photos. It's just, I was reminded of how much I love it, and it just gave me such a boost in mental health. And it's, I think, one of those interesting things, because although and we will do a full episode over this one time, we just didn't want to overwhelm you with our nerdiness, so we will do a full episode on cosplay. But it's just one of those things, even though cosplay is not the most sustainable thing in the world, it brings me so much joy, and it also brought the people who I met so much joy, because they were just so happy to see me in my costume that it's kind of worth it. Now, I did try to do steps to make this more sustainable. I re-wore a costume that I wore on a previous convention, and I do that a lot. I think people should rewear their costumes. I think I also had a moment, I want to say a small moment of genius in preparation for this convention.
Which was last minute, can I add?
Exactly. And this was the thing, because the day before I was going to head up to Lisbon for this convention, I tried on my cosplay, and I realized that I was missing an accessory, because it was originally in Dublin, and then when my dad visited me a few weeks ago, he was kind enough to bring it. They missed one thing. So it meant that, because accessories are also key to this character, one of my arms was completely bare and was missing accessories, and the other one was covered in accessories, and I was just oh, I do not like this. What can I do? And ever since I moved to Portugal, I live in a very minimalist life, because I live in a very small apartment. I also move around a lot. Putting in a context, in the 3 years now that I lived in Portugal,
3 years, wow.
2.5 more, 2.5. I've moved 6 times. The night before, I was looking around my apartment, and I was just okay, what can I do? And now, if I was back in Dublin, I have a little mini sewing studio where I would probably have found something very easily to put together, but I didn't. But it really bothered me that I didn't have any sort of accessories on my arm. So I start looking through my drawers, and I spot this bright red phone cable that does not work, that it broke. But because it's me, I didn't just want to throw it in the trash. And I'm just
so you hoarded it.
I hoarded it, and I looked at it, and I'm like, this character is a punk character. That could work. So I made a bracelet out of this phone cable.
A red phone cable?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I thought that was a piece of jewelry that you'd picked up. That's so clever.
Yeah, I was so proud of myself. Had a couple of safety pins, so I used that to close it. And yeah, I was just it still didn't look the best, but I was just okay, that arm isn't bare. So yeah, I was very proud, and I think it made up for the fact that I got my eyelashes from Primark. I'm just going to skip over that part.
We love it. We love a DIY. We love a DIY. That's fantastic. We'll post the picture somewhere, because on pictures, you would just think it's just a red accessory. Well done. This was meant to be a sustainable fail. It turned into a sustainable triumph. So a near sustainable fail. It was nearly a sustainable fail. So this week I've gone vegetarian. I've I kept feeling guilty and kept going, I should just be vegetarian, vegan, and not doing it. And on Sunday I just turned around to my family and went, I'm vegetarian now. I'm just going to stick with it. I'm very much all or nothing. So I'm vegetarian, and it's gone really well so far. It's just really little things I've forgotten to look out for. So the other day we were on the way back from the gym, and I wanted a little pick me up for the road. So I did break and get some sweets, and I'm not used to just looking at packets and going, hey, is it vegetarian or vegan? And I think it was a Haribo strawberry or something like that. It was literally touching my lips, and then I went, oh my gosh, it's a sweet. I need to check this. And it wasn't vegetarian. I was oh no. 2 days in, I nearly broke. And luckily, actually, I did look around at some other sweets, and there's a far more vegetarian and vegan sweets out there now, and I don't usually eat sweet, but I was so close to breaking my 2-day streak. So yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. being a vegetarian. I'm sure I will mess up, but it's fine. We can deal. So yeah, near sustainable fail this week.
I just also want to clarify, you don't have to go vegetarian or vegan to like help planet.
Oh yes, definitely not.
Like, because some people aren't in the financial situation to do it, or just health-wise they can't do it. So this is an option that Beth chose, but don't feel like you need to choose it. Like.
Definitely not. I feel like it was right for me. And like Marie said, I am privileged enough to be able to afford it and make them changes to my life. And you know what? I actually really like vegetarian food, and I would always go for the vegetarian option when I was out at a restaurant, just because I was like, I think this tastes nicer. So yeah, it made sense for me. I feel better doing it. Don't feel like you have to do anything drastic like that. But if you do, let me know how it goes, because yeah, there's so much more stuff you have to think about that I forgot to think about, hence the sustainable fail. So without further ado, I thought this week I would actually take the reins from Marie and do an episode for all of you. And I wanted to talk about a topic that many of us experience and actually takes our podcast name slightly more literally. Yes, this is the period episode. So welcome to Two Girls, One Reusable Cup, your sustainable support group where we navigate the pains and cramps of living a low-waste lifestyle. I'm Beth, and I'll be joined by the amazing Marie, and this week we'll be discussing, is my period giving the planet cramps? I'm really pleased with all these period puns. I really hope they go down well. Anyway, so let's talk about that time of the month, menstruation and periods. Now, I'm aware that we try to be an educational channel here at Two Girls, One Reusable Cup, so I wanted to give a short definition on what I mean when I refer to the word period, without sounding like the sex education talks we all absolutely dread at school. So according to the NHS, a period is part of the menstrual cycle when a person bleeds from down there for a few days. For most people, this happens every 28 days, but this can be longer or shorter depending on the person. So, Marie, as someone who also menstruates, how many periods do you think
Unfortunately,
how many periods do you think you will have in a lifetime? Other than a lot.
A lot. I think I was like 13 when I got my first period. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of Friends, you know. Then when they go to that play, chapter 1, my first period.
We should have just called it that, chapter 1. It's gonna be a long episode.
So yeah, I think I was around 13, and menopause kicks around like 50, 60. Like sometimes. So, I'm terrible at math, but that is like 50 years, like 40 to 50 years of periods. So a lot. You're
right with a lot, but you're quite ambitious with the number. So
no, I meant like for the time you have like 40, you have like,
yes, I see what you mean.
It will be 40 years.
Yes. So on average, that's kind of how long you have periods for.
Yeah.
But in terms of if you added every kind of cycle together, on average, we menstruate for about 7 years during our lifetime, which is a long time. And just to put that into perspective, every time we menstruate, we lose about 30 to 72 milliliters of blood, which is about 5 to 12 teaspoons. And for some people, this is even heavier.
Yeah, I take issue with the word teaspoon. Because when we had the dreaded sex education talk in school, it shouldn't be, to be honest, it shouldn't be dreaded. One day on a different podcast or a different alternative, I will say how badly sex ed was in my school. Because now as an adult looking back to it, I'm just like, nope, that was terrible. You shouldn't have done it like that. But the woman was just like, yeah, it's only like 2 to 3 teaspoons. And then when I got my first period, I was like, 2 to 3 teaspoons? Fucking liar. Like,
yeah. It's not the best, is it? It makes us feel like a cake recipe or something. It's like, oh, it's just a pinch of salt and a teaspoon of this. It is not.
Like the first time you go through it, you're like, oh my God, I'm dying. Like, what is happening?
But so that's kind of how much blood we produce. And this is completely normal and a natural part of the human body. Yet how we hygienically dispose of the aftermath is a completely different story. As you can imagine, 7 years of menstruation is a long long time, meaning a lot of period products, most of which we end up throwing away. So I wanted to talk a bit about the environmental impacts of periods. Marie, standard cycle, you're using single-use disposable period products. How much do you think you throw away during one period?
I think during like, I have like a 5 days. So I go about I go about through, I think like 12 to 15 pads.
That's like a whole, that's like a whole pack of pads. Yeah.
On like regular. It didn't used to be that much when I was on birth control, but I'm not anymore because COVID got in the way and I couldn't get my prescription renewed, and now it's like, But anyway, so that like did reduce the amount that I went through, but now that I'm like all naturel to say, like without any interfering hormones, with like a complete normal period, a lot. I go through a lot. Day 2, 3, 4 are the worst, and then it kind of slows down.
That happens, isn't it? You're really heavy at the start and then it becomes less and less. So with pads, you can use heavier pads at the start and then there's like lighter versions of pads at the end. But a pack is quite a lot, isn't it? You're throwing quite a lot away in just one site. And if you times that by, how many months in a year? But if you times that by 12 that's a lot. There's a lot of products in a year. And actually, according to the Sustainable Review, a single menstruator will use somewhere between 5 and 15,000 single-use pads and tampons. That's a lot of menstruation products. But what is the problem here? So the main issue, like with many single-use materials, is that these products take a long time to decompose, like 500 to 800 years long to decompose if you think of the product itself and the packaging you purchase it in, which I've always had a massive problem with, because the last thing I want in a cubicle when I'm putting my pad on is for everyone else to hear it and know that I'm on my period.
Oh my God, that is like the worst fear, like now that you mention it, because I am a pad user.
Yeah.
And so just that rip every time.
So the whole universe knows I'm on my period now.
And then again, it shouldn't be a bad thing. We shouldn't be embarrassed for being on our period.
No, because there's the whole thing with pads being discreet, and you can get them with little bags and boxes so people don't know you've got your pads in your bag. But it's like, well, everyone will know I've got my pad when I open it up. So it's as much about the product as the packaging that these come in. As you can imagine, these products and packaging end up in our landfills and are also the 5th most common type of waste washing up on our beaches. So they have an awful effect on our environment and our wildlife. And unfortunately, it's not even the end of life that is the problem with these disposable period products. A year's worth of disposable pads and tampons for one person produces 8.9 kilograms of CO2 emissions within the product's production. This is about the same as charging a mobile phone more than 1,000 times, or to put it into bigger perspective, this is an overall carbon footprint of 15 million tons of greenhouse gases emissions per year, the same as burning 35 million barrels of oil, according to the UN Environmental Programme. So that's a lot of emissions. And you know what? You shouldn't feel ashamed of this. The history and design of these disposable menstruation products has really not evolved much since their conception in the 20th century. We will mention later on, a lot of these disposable alternatives are much more accessible and affordable, but they come in a lot of plastic.
Also, this is just like a quick PSA. Please don't flush it down the toilet, because like I do know like there are few people who do that even though it's clearly on the packaging. Please do not flush your pads and tampons.
Oh, that's even worse.
Like that just leads to a whole host of problems, and like it can block your toilet, and then if not, it is like a direct stream into our oceans, or just where our waste ends up. So please do not flush pads and tampons down the toilet.
The toilet is not a bin, people.
No.
If you dispose of disposable period product, put them straight in the bin.
I don't know if you had this thought, but when we moved in together, because we had to share a bathroom, one of my first thoughts was like, oh my God, what do I do if I'm on my period? That was one of my first thoughts when we moved in together, because I knew we would share a bathroom. And like, luckily our bathrooms had because we had like cleaning like we did have a cleaning lady
yeah
to come in and that did the toilets and the showers, because they were separate. And we had the disposable bins that we saw, disposable bins that are available like in nearly like every public space. But I just remember having that thought and having that fear, like, oh no, like I will have to put my pad in the bin in front of everyone to see. And it's just like, that shouldn't have been a worry.
No, not at all.
Me.
Because we're all going through the same thing. It's such an elephant in the room, and it shouldn't be.
And it was an apartment of 9 girls. Like, we were all going through it.
We're all going through the pain and suffering. So I wanted to go into a little bit of the history of disposable period products. So in the beginning, period products were a bit grim, and there was no clear go-to product. Materials from papyrus, cloths to belts were used, and people took a very kind of DIY approach to dealing with menstruation. And actually, one of my favorite accounts from history is from the 4th century, where a woman called Hypatia, I've probably said that wrong, Hypatia, one of the first female mathematicians, is said to have thrown a used menstrual cloth at a man in an effort to make him go away. It's disgusting. That was on the Science Museum website. I was like, that's a weird little fact that I
an effective repellent.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a fun
want
little
a guy to walk
tell.
away, just mention the word period, and it's like the road runner.
Yeah.
They're gone. Like,
well, I'm guessing that worked for her. So it was a little bit unclear. It was a little bit gross. And then it all kind of changed in the 1960s, which was the plastic boom. So essentially in the 1960s, plastic technologies actually leapt so far forwards that manufacturers just didn't know what markets to incorporate all these new shiny products and materials into. And then they stumbled upon the menstrual product market. And these new materials basically led to what we know today as disposable pads and tampons, the plastic ones and the plastic wrappers. So they incorporated the polypropylene into pads, and they found they could make much more flexible and leak-proof products. Not to mention the revolutionary addition of adhesive wings in the 70s, which everyone got very excited about, apparently. Love a wing.
Wings are essential. I mean, I cannot use pads without wings, because I cannot sit still in general. Like, using a pad without wings is disastrous for me, because it just moves, because like I just move about so much. So no, wings are essential.
Like, the other stuff sounds horrible, but I'd hate to have one without wings, because you are moving around. It's like, that's never going to stay in place. It is literally, pardon the pun, going to fly off.
And just to clarify, polypropylene is plastic.
Yes, that is as plastic gets. So they got really excited about all this new plastic, and they're like, wow, this is perfect. We could actually do something with the menstrual product market that's looking really grim at the moment. And we were talking here about pads. Tampons didn't escape plastic either, and actually introducing plastic to tampons in the 1970s made these products 100 times safer than their predecessor. Another little fun history fact: some manufacturers actually had the idea of using stainless steel and glass back in 1929 when the first tampon patents were being created, which is a massive no.
But wait, in what form?
So,
as you stick glass up there, or
yes, you stick glass up there,
like an applicator, or like the actual
thing.
What, like a
yes,
like the plug in a bathtub? Was that the idea? To like
they wanted to plug us up. This was the first time someone sat down and went, we should probably look at making some menstruation products, which is, it's mad. So by the middle of the century, when we're all getting very excited about these new innovations, major manufacturers were really competing for customers, but they were really running out at this point of technological advances to kind of shout about. Like, how do you beat wings, basically? So they really lent on pushing the disposability aspect of the products, and this became even more appealing with more people entering the workforce and wanting something a bit more kind of discreet. So disposable period products were revolutionary, basically. So we cannot deny that this advancement in period technology was revolutionary and still is. It's made these products more accessible and frankly a lot safer. But these products have not really evolved over the last century and are not equipped to deal with our current global issues, such as period poverty, which for those who don't know what period poverty is, it's a lack of access to sanitary products due to financial constraints and other factors. And this affects people all over the globe. And of course, the other global issue, which we've talked about, such as plastic pollution.
I don't know if you remember this, but back in the old days in uni, one drunken night, we had like a list of objectives. Like we made like a bucket list.
We made a little manifesto. I remember that. We put that up.
And one of them was abolish period tax. Spoilers, we weren't really successful on that point.
Sorry, guys. We're still working on it.
Yeah, I just remember that in like big capital letters on our like bulletin board was abolish period tax, because that is another thing. Period products are taxed as a luxury item because, of course, having a period is a luxury.
Which is crazy. And that's the disposable period products as well. It's completely unjust. So period products, basically, the timeline of them is very complex, very messy, and kind of shameful. So knowing all of this, the big question is, what can we do? Are our periods causing a massive environmental burden to the planet? Is there anything that we as the consumers can do? So I'm somewhat of a menstrual product connoisseur, which I bet's a word you've never heard in your life. I have tried and tested a range of options to try and find something that minimizes my environmental impact while being accessible and basically comfortable for my vagina. I haven't just gone out and tried all these things. It has very much been, as this podcast says, a journey of trying to find the right thing. So what I thought I would do is maybe give a bit of a roundup of products I've actually found are really, really helpful and give a bit of pro and con. So before I do that, Marie, what are your go-to products? What's your journey?
My journey is actually quite simple. I still use disposable pads. The reason for this is because I don't have a washing machine. So I currently share a washing machine, which also means that I don't have access to it as much as I would need. So the reason I don't use the options I would go for would either be the underpants or the pad, because I don't use tampons. I don't like using tampons. It's just not my thing. So the cup wouldn't be I wouldn't even consider it. So those do need to be washed right away and separate. And I don't have that option to me at this moment. So yeah, at this current moment, I use disposable products. I'm not a massive fan that I use disposable products, but unfortunately, that's just how my current lifestyle is. I cannot make it up.
You've highlighted such a great point there. When I'm talking about this product, a lot of them are reusable, and with things that are reusable, hygiene-wise, you have to wash them, and you have to wash them at different temperatures and separately, like Marie has said. And if you don't have access to that, you are going to struggle because then it's not hygienic. I mean, it's something that I would like to look into as well. I'm sure in terms of disposable pads, I've seen in the shops you can now get bamboo disposable pads. I don't know how good they are in terms of the planet and if actually they're very comfortable. So I know that is an option.
I have actually been struggling with pads here. One thing that is the one thing here in Portugal, that the pads that are available in my local supermarket are not great. They are really plasticky and they do not feel great, which is why when I went back to Ireland over Christmas, I came back with pads because
you just stocked up for souvenirs.
Yeah. I think mostly this is not, of course, an ad or a shout out to them, but I think one of the defaults, because just they're so easy to get in the UK and Ireland, is Always. And you can't get the Always brand here.
Always are decent.
Yeah, that's was always my go-to when I lived in the UK, and you can't get them here. And the ones that I get in the supermarket are just, really plasticky. The wings aren't great.
They're the best part.
I've been struggling. I found one more expensive that claims that it's completely made out of cotton. But they're more expensive, but they also feel more nicer. So I do go for them.
Comfort's so important. I have a bone to pick with the adhesive wings, actually. I don't think they're very comfortable, and you get one shot at wrapping them. If you wrap them wrong, then you can't, then you're screwed. You can't do anything. And if a bit of adhesive is sticking out, it's they're so sticky. I feel like you could fix things with the adhesive that's on pads because it's so stupidly strong. It's like the wristbands you get at a festival. They're never coming off your
and
wrist.
have you ever had them when they twist into each other?
Oh no!
And like,
I hate that. That's such a pain. Why is
it's
no
such a pain, and you
this?
cannot get it. And sometimes the pad that itself actually rips, and it's just a horror show.
They're a nightmare.
With all the like praise we do for wings, like how they're necessity, like bad wings, or when you fold them wrong and they like twist into each other, it's just causes...
Someone fix this. I'm taxed for it, and 2, it's not very good.
Exactly. We're paying the taxes. We might as well get a decent product.
Yeah, come on. So I'm going to talk about here kind of some of my favorite reusable products. Now, these are great, but they also do have cons, and the majority are not as accessible and affordable as the disposable alternatives. So do not beat yourself up if you can't afford or access these products. I'm going to go through them and just to make suggestions to see if any of them are relevant to you. So top of my list, which is controversial for some people, is the reusable cup. It has changed my life. I'm such a big fan of these. So if you're not sure what this is, they're basically medical grade silicone cups with a little stem on the bottom. They are foldable, and essentially you put it up there and this is hilarious. This is like a sex ed kind of class, and then it suctions, so essentially it will capture all the blood, but you'll have no leaks. These were originally patented in 1937, so before all that bollocks I was talking about before even happened, by someone called Leona Chalmers, who came up with this amazing quote, which I love. She said, "I have found a solution to a problem as old as Eve." I think it's poetic. Anyway, so you've probably heard of the Moon Cup. They're kind of the first original cup that came to market about 2 decades ago, but you also have cups like Organi Cup, etc. They're a lot more accessible on the market now. And the great thing about these is you buy them once, and then if you look after them, they last for 10 years. So that's 10 years of not having to buy any more horrible adhesive wings. And in the long run, you do end up saving money. The other good thing about the Moon Cup, it lasts for about 6 to 8 hours. So you don't have to worry about it. So for example, my friends are paramedics. They got on really well with these because they don't get a lot of toilet breaks. So during the duration of their shift, they might only have to change it once. So again, really, really big fan of these. The only cons is they say that the first 4 cycles, it's a bit uncomfortable. And I have a kind of really sad story to go with this. When I first bought my Moon Cup, really excited, I couldn't get it back down. So I sat on the toilet crying, watching a YouTube tutorial on how to remove my cup. And it terrified me. And I had, my friend had a similar experience. She was like, "Beth, I don't know how to get it out." And I kind of had to do like a sex ed lesson with her. Now I've been using it for about 2 years. So I've gotten used to it. But the first few times it's not uncomfortable. It's just a weird sensation. And it's also the last thing you want to do on your period is put a cup up there. I sometimes get so moody. I'm like, no. So it's uncomfortable. And I have to say as well, misuse can lead to medical problems. Make sure you keep it clean. Every time you use it, make sure you boil water and sterilize it for a few hours to make sure it's completely clean before your next use. So all in all, reusable cups are pretty good, and they're not for everyone. I think go on, sorry, I was just wanting to say, like, a massive con for it is if you don't have access to running water, then it's not a good option for you. Definitely. It makes sense, for example, if you put it in the morning and then in the evening if you are able to clean it. But yes, there's that. And also, as I say, over 10 years, you kind of make your money back. But the kind of going rate for these things are around 20 to 30 pounds, depending on the brand. So that's a lot more expensive than, for example, disposable pads and tampons, but possibly a good investment over the long run. So the other reusable alternatives that I really like, and I do use on top of using the Moon Cup, is reusable pads. Now, Marie touched upon these before. Essentially, these are exactly like disposable pads, but they're made of fabric. They do have wings. They usually have little popper clips to clip the wings together so you don't get any of that annoying sticky nonsense we were talking about before. They tend to be a lot comfier because they're made of fabric. Great if you don't want to put anything up there like a tampon or a cup, and you can get some really cute designs as well, and a lot of local makers are starting to make them, which is really cool. So the problems with reusable pads, like Marie said, is you have to be able to wash them. You have to be able to wash them separately and on a different setting to your usual wash. And if you don't have access to that, then it's not hygienic for you then to reuse it. The other annoying thing is I find them very bulky. I definitely don't feel very attractive wearing one. So even though they're comfier, you don't get the kind of light feel that you would with disposable pads. I find they're really good at nighttime if you're just kind of sitting in one position, but if you're kind of out and about, they're not fantastic. So I tend to use my moon cup in the day and then my pads at night time, and it's also good to possibly have a few different pairs on the go too. And of course the other con is these are a lot more expensive than disposable pads. You're probably looking at between £5 to £10 for one, whereas a pack of pads in the UK you're paying a couple of pounds for maybe a pack of 12 to 14. Reusable pads are pretty good, but cost is an issue. Then the last one that I use and I've had a good experience with is period pants. I think these are relatively new to the market. I'm seeing way more supermarkets and brands stocking them now. They are essentially pants, but they're kind of double, triple lined. So you've got the pad kind of feeling built in. So they're great because they're a lot lighter. It feels like you're not wearing anything. I've put it on my notes, sexy. I feel a lot sexier wearing them. And they're incredibly comfy. And you can now get quite pretty period pants. They used to be very Bridget Jones pants. Now they're fair, you can get quite a few different colours and designs. Again, con here, guys, is the washing. It's the same as the pads. You have to make sure you wash them separately. I would also argue they are not good for heavy flows. They will not protect you. The fear of leaking onto a seat is real with these. I would definitely use them later in your cycle. And the other thing to be aware of is, yes, they're more expensive than just buying a pair of pants, and be careful on what they are made of. So there's loads of things you can use. You can use them all together. You can use them separately. The most important thing is, out of everything, even being environmental, is finding what works for you and your flow, makes you feel comfortable and safe.
Yeah, and I think like hearing you like go through another pros and cons of this, I think another like con that like sprang into my head is like public bathrooms. What do you do in those situations? As I said earlier, my flow is slightly heavier. I do need to change my pads more often, so it's just like, I know for the reusable pads you can get like waterproof bags where you can put your reusable pad in them, but again, are you comfortable carrying that around in your bag all day? And most people aren't. And then with the cup, like you can't exactly empty it in a public bathroom. If you don't have access to a sink, you're a little bit screwed.
Yeah, I find as well, I don't know about anyone else, my flow is very much all over the place. I really don't know when I'm going to start. It's always a nice little surprise every month, and I don't carry my moon cup in my bag every day. So, and I guess you can carry your reusable pads, but they're bulky. So like Marie said, it's if you want to carry them around with you. There's definitely more preparation with this, but yeah, I would say do what you can and be comfortable. Like I said, the last thing I want to do on my period is shove a cup up there. It really annoys me every month that I have to do it. So yeah, do what works for you and your journey.
I mean, I feel like I'm playing a bit of devil's advocate here, but it's just because I looked into buying like period underwear and I couldn't find any that are sold in Europe, only in the UK, which is another massive con because of Brexit.
They're quite new at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, I would have to pay like import taxes on those, and that's already like another additional. So if anyone actually knows of like good quality period underwear that they're sold in Europe, in Portugal preferably, Germany is another option for me, that would be great, because that is another thing. Like at least here I don't see this stuff in stores.
Yeah,
and you would have to order them.
in the UK, kind of in the last 5 years, I've seen a moon cup in person. It does seem relatively new, which is kind of sad, really. Hopefully in the future we'll see more supermarkets stocking loads of different options rather than just one or two things. So it's kind of whatever you can do, really. So as a little conclusion, I've put what else can we do? So like I said, find products that work for you and your flow, and then think about the environment. Start the conversation, openly talk about what products you use with your friends. That's kind of how I've found out about the moon cup, etc. Make this an open conversation. There's actually an initiative in Jersey that I found that's really, really cool in the Channel Islands from the Jersey Sustainable Period Product Project, which was a very long title. And actually, they've found that in schools during sex education talks, they don't talk at all about sustainable period products. They only talk about period products. So from this, they've started an initiative where they take period packs into schools to educate children on reusable period products and what they look like. So in their pack, they'll have all the products I've mentioned, the cups, the pads, the pants, just to educate people more about what is out there and how to use them, so you don't end up like me crying on the toilet, which I think is a lovely initiative. There needs to be more education around it.
Also, like, let us know on our socials, like, because period products are different in every country. For example, like, I know in Germany, like, because my mom's German and I'm technically German, even though I don't like to call myself German, tampons are mainly made out of cotton. We only have like a plastic seal around them, but then they're mainly made of cotton. And applicators aren't, especially in Europe, I've only seen like applicators pop up in the last few years. It was mainly like something I saw in the UK. I also read somewhere that in Korea, they have cardboard applicators in South Korea.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize applicators, I thought that was a standard that came with a tampon. I didn't realize.
No, not at all. Like when I first tried tampons and they came with an applicator, I was so confused because I never saw them before, because like obviously I know all this stuff from my mom, and my mom never used applicators. Like you just
put it up there.
By the way, about the cardboard applicators, I heard they hurt like a bitch. So I would be very interested to know like what our products are accessible where you live, and let us know, because
definitely that would be really interesting.
We need to destigmatize periods. We need to talk about this more.
Yeah, definitely. There needs to be far more education around periods. And actually, we touched upon before period poverty, and that's not just lack of access to period products because of their financial situation, also education. There's a lack of education around products and what is safe to use and what is not. And something I've also put down here that is something you can do is you can support ActionAid. They have a campaign to end period poverty called Donate to Share a Better Period. You can donate as a one-off or monthly, and they do initiatives such as £7 a month could fund workshops to help teach young people how to make their own safe sanitary products. It's definitely something to get behind. I can't imagine living in a world where I get my period and I can't do anything about it, because periods are a natural part of us as people. So that's definitely something to get behind.
In my school, because you were talking about bringing in the boxes into school, I got well annoyed about this. So in my geography class, I always sat at the very back because I wasn't a very good student and I didn't really care about stuff.
This is new. I didn't know you were a bit of a rebel.
I know. That's the thing. I was not even a rebel. I didn't care enough to be a rebel. Like, I was just dead inside. I just sat there and like not. My education is just a whole other issue. But anyway, me and my friend, we always sit next to each other at the back, and like behind us there were these piles and piles of boxes, and I always wondered like, what on earth are these boxes? Like, why? Because like they were like always in the way, and always like. And then like one day, I just like, I think like during my last year at school, I asked, and they're like, oh, they're just a bunch of pads and tampon boxes. And I'm like, I'm sorry? Do you know the amount of times I was in school and like panicking because I did not have a pad or a tampon and they were right behind me?
I would have been disappointed. I thought,
this whole time they were behind me, and I was just like, and they're like, do you want some? I'm like, yes, Like, so she's like started handing them out. Like everyone had like a box, and I was just
That's
like,
like
can I
doing
get two?
half the initiative. Like,
Yeah, no, they just forgot to hand them out, and more came, and more boxes started piling, and they just forgot to hand them out to us. And it's just like, it bothered me so much because we did have the like paid containers in our bathrooms, but they were always broken and they never worked and they were never restocked. So like at times I would have to like ask around, and usually always someone had one, but I was a very, very shy kid, and
oh,
stuff
the
like that.
stigma of asking for period products.
The stigma, I mean, I was so nervous about asking. I did not feel comfortable about talking about that stuff. Again, this is again how I was educated. Luckily, my friend just did not care and just shouted it, and every time I needed it, she always just shouted out really loud, like, does anyone have a pad? And it's just like, I'm always grateful that she did it, but I always had to like always like shyly like try to find people, and I was like, are you kidding me? They were behind me the whole time. The
Did
whole
it feel
time. I
like
find this out in my last year. Could have used this information a very long time ago.
But that's why we're here, to share our knowledge, education, and really tragic stories. And on that note, that's been our period episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And like Marie said, please let us know products that you use all around the world. We'd be really interested to know. And if you have any trouble with finding period products or using them, it'd be great to start this discussion and end the stigma of talking about periods, because they're there. They're not going away.
They're not going away. We have them.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We really appreciate it. If you really like hearing our voices, I hate hearing my own voice, but if you want to hear it some more,
Great thing we started a podcast then.
I know. Please subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us on. You can also join us on our socials on Instagram, 2 Girls, 1 Reusable Cup, and also our Twitter. Me and Marie also have our own channels you can follow us on, which I will link in the bio. And please join us next week for whatever we will be discussing. Yeah, goodbye.